What if humanity's true origin story is far darker and more complex than we've been led to believe? What if the idea of paradise lost isn't just a poetic notion but a deliberate misrepresentation, a way to keep us questioning nothing, blind to our own beginnings? Today we're peeling back the layers on one of the most unsettling questions that few dare to ask: who were the first humans really? And was Eden truly a paradise or something far more sinister? The Bible opens with a scene that's been ingrained in our minds for centuries: Adam and Eve, dwelling in a flawless garden in supposed harmony with God. Yet, doesn't something about this vision feel simplified? After all, the Bible isn't just a collection of stories, it's a work of ancient knowledge, packed with cryptic meanings, complex themes, and hints that seem purposefully concealed. What if this story isn't just about humanity's beginning, but about our intended role? Think about Genesis for a moment. It presents humanity not as co-creators or equal partners with God, but as beings kept in a controlled environment, under strict instructions, free to enjoy everything, except the forbidden fruit. It's as if they were placed inside a delicate, curated habitat, with God saying, "Enjoy, but don't cross that line." Why set up such a rule if not to test their obedience, or even keep them under control? Does this really align with the notion of humans as beloved creations, or does it imply something more restrictive? Now, enter the serpent. But this is no ordinary creature. The serpent has been a symbol in cultures worldwide for centuries, a symbol often representing wisdom, transformation, and yes, liberation. Why is this serpent in the garden tempting Adam and Eve, not towards sin, but towards knowledge itself? The fruit they are tempted by is from the tree of knowledge, not the tree of sin. This is knowledge of good and evil, of self and universe, the kind of awareness that seems to elevate humans closer to divinity. What purpose does this awareness serve, and why was it so forbidden? This brings us to a fascinating point. In the story, God reacts with startling speed once Adam and Eve gain this knowledge. Their eyes are opened, they see the world anew, and what's the first thing God does? He casts them out. But here's the twist: Adam and Eve didn't harm anyone, they didn't lie, cheat, or commit any traditional sin. Their only transgression was attaining knowledge. So the question arises, was this paradise truly idyllic, or was it more like a cage? And if it was a cage, then who or what was its warden? Then there's the chilling outcome: humanity is cursed. This isn't just Adam and Eve's punishment, it's a curse that will follow every generation to come, a perpetual mark on humanity. For one decision to pursue knowledge, every descendant of Adam and Eve is condemned to suffering, toil, and loss. Take a moment to consider the enormity of this punishment. It's almost as if humanity was designed to remain in ignorance, and this single act of defiance shattered the established order. And here lies the most provocative question of all: what if Adam and Eve were not the first humans, but the first dissenters, the first beings who dared to question, to step beyond the boundaries, to reach for truth over blind obedience? In this light, they are no longer failures but pioneers, symbols of anyone who has ever dared to defy imposed limits. But the version of the story we've inherited casts them as failures. Yet, what if the so-called fall wasn't a tragic error, but humanity's first brave act toward autonomy, our first step out of a controlled existence? But there's more. In some ancient texts and traditions, there's a suggestion that Eden itself wasn't intended as an eternal paradise, but as a trial, a place for humanity to face choices, a place that humanity might ultimately outgrow. In Gnostic traditions, the serpent doesn't appear as a villain but as a liberator, the one who enables humanity to grasp their own power and consciousness, to break away from the constraints of a controlled existence. So here we are, left to ponder, was Eden really a paradise, or was it a prison? Were Adam and Eve mere victims of a cosmic setup, or were they the first heroes of human independence? If their actions were indeed humanity's first steps toward liberation, what does that say about the narrative we've been told for generations? Have you ever felt that the world doesn't add up? That there are forces at work just outside the edges of what we're told? What if there's more to the story? And what if the truth is intentionally hidden from view? Today, we're tearing the lid off one of the most explosive theories in ancient lore, that the God described in the Old Testament might not be the all-benevolent creator we've been taught. Buckle up, because this revelation could change the way you see everything you thought you knew. In Gnostic beliefs, there's this fascinating concept, the Demiurge. It's not your typical creator figure. Think of the Demiurge more like a cosmic architect, a lesser god who's both flawed and deeply insecure. According to this view, the Demiurge is the one who actually created our material world. And here's the kicker: he's not interested in humanity's freedom or enlightenment. He's interested in power, control, and keeping us in the dark. Now, if that sounds shocking, let's look at the Old Testament with fresh eyes. The God there is often depicted as intense, wrathful, even jealous. He destroys entire cities, floods the earth, punishes generations. If this were a God solely of love and mercy, why so much punishment? Why so many rules designed to keep humanity in line? It starts to sound less like a nurturing creator and more like a ruler protecting his authority. The Gnostics believe this Demiurge intentionally created a flawed, limited world, a world that would keep us busy, distracted, bound to physical needs, and ignorant of our higher potential. And isn't that exactly how many of us feel today? Constantly chasing after survival, while deeper truths and greater knowledge slip further and further away. To the Gnostics, this wasn't just some unfortunate situation, it was by design. They even had a term for it: the prison of matter. The Demiurge, they said, trapped souls in physical bodies, chaining them to desires, fears, and the endless cycle of birth and death. And here's where it gets even more radical. The Gnostics claimed that beyond this false creator lies the true divine source, pure, boundless, and absolutely unreachable by the Demiurge. So in essence, they saw the God of the Old Testament not as the ultimate creator, but as a middle manager, running his own limited kingdom, jealous and furious if anyone dared to look beyond his authority. Think about the implications of this. If the Gnostics are right, we're living in a world designed to keep us small, to keep us obeying, to keep us from connecting with the true divine source. And the Creator, the one worshipped and feared for thousands of years, is actually working to keep humanity in line rather than setting us free. This isn't just some ancient theory. The idea of a world created to keep us in chains mentally, spiritually, and even physically resonates deeply today. A system built on control, on fear, on rules that don't make sense, but we're just supposed to follow. And the most chilling part? We've been taught to see this as normal, even holy. We've all heard the story of angels and demons, good versus evil, right? But what if I told you there's a hidden chapter in humanity's history, a dark and twisted story about angels who didn't just fall from heaven, but left something behind, something in us? Let's talk about the Nephilim, a race that's often overlooked but might be the key to understanding who or what we really are. In the book of Genesis, there's this strange and often glossed over passage. It talks about the sons of God's celestial beings, angels who came to earth and had children with human women. The offspring of these unions? Giants not just physically massive, but beings with a mix of divine and human traits. They were called the Nephilim, and their existence was considered a grave threat, so dangerous that God sent a flood to wipe them out. But here's the real kicker: some say they didn't all die. There's a whole theory that suggests the blood of the Nephilim, the so-called fallen ones, didn't vanish in the flood but mingled with humanity. That means that, according to some interpretations, we might carry the remnants of the hybrid lineage within us, a mix of human and something else. Think about what that could mean: the blood of angels or fallen beings running through human veins. What does that make us? Are we just the children of Adam and Eve, or do we have a far stranger origin? Now, fast forward to ancient civilizations. Many cultures have myths of giants, semi-divine figures, and beings with incredible power and wisdom who once walked among us. In fact, some of the world's greatest myths hint at humans descended from gods or giants. And if the Nephilim were real, could they be the origin of these stories? Were they, in fact, the legendary giants, the demigods, the heroes of myth? Some researchers believe that evidence of these beings is all around us: ancient megalithic structures, impossible architecture, knowledge of astronomy and mathematics that seems centuries, if not millennia, ahead of its time. Some say this knowledge could have come from the Nephilim or their descendants, that they left a legacy of advanced understanding that humanity is still struggling to fully comprehend. But let's take this further. What if these Nephilim descendants, carrying that supernatural knowledge and power, didn't vanish but instead helped shape the course of human civilization? Could certain bloodlines or groups hold onto this divine heritage even now, passing it down through the generations? There are people who argue that our fascination with royal bloodlines and noble ancestry might trace back to these ancient stories. Think about it: an elite lineage with connections to something far beyond ordinary humanity. It's a concept that shows up in history, in myth, and even in our modern obsessions. And if this bloodline does exist, it raises a haunting question: are some of us closer to this ancient legacy than others? Is it possible that the Nephilim's influence still lingers, that the supernatural abilities, the wisdom, or even the ambition of these giants are alive within certain individuals or groups? And if so, are these powers being used for humanity's benefit, or could they be part of some hidden agenda? What if some of humanity's greatest achievements weren't just the work of brilliant minds, but of hidden forces, lost cities, and forbidden knowledge that we were never meant to uncover? You know the names Babel, Sodom, Atlantis. These weren't just cities, they were symbols of human potential and ambition, cities that reached for the stars in ways that almost seemed supernatural. Let's start with Babel. The Bible tells us that humanity was united, speaking one language, building a tower that would reach the heavens. But when God saw what they were doing, He shut it down, scattered humanity, and confused their language. Now, ask yourself why. Why was that such a threat? If humans were just primitive beings fumbling around in the dirt, why would a tower matter to a divine being? Some believe Babel wasn't just a tower, it may have been a center of knowledge, a hub where humans were unlocking secrets of the universe, the kind of knowledge that could break the boundaries set for us. Advanced technology, maybe even the ability to tap into energies we can barely understand. And when God intervened, it wasn't just about stopping a construction project, it was about restricting access to something humans weren't supposed to touch: forbidden knowledge. And it doesn't stop there. Sodom and Gomorrah, these cities weren't destroyed just for wickedness, as we've been told. Some interpretations suggest that they were centers of experimentation, perhaps even places where humanity was beginning to toy with the natural order itself. The Bible talks about the sin of these cities, but some ancient texts hint that this was more than moral corruption. It could have involved secrets of life itself, knowledge of creation, maybe even genetic manipulation. It's as if these cities held a forbidden science, a pathway to power that threatened to unravel the fabric of what was allowed. And so they were erased, scorched off the face of the earth as a warning. Now, Atlantis, it isn't mentioned directly in the Bible, but think about this: almost every ancient culture has a legend of a golden civilization that fell. Atlantis, in Plato's writings, was an advanced society destroyed by a great flood because of its arrogance and misuse of power. Sound familiar? Atlantis and Babel, two stories of humanity reaching too high, getting too close to God-like knowledge, only to be struck down. Some scholars even speculate that Atlantis might not have been a single city, but a network of civilizations with shared knowledge that we see hints of in ancient Egypt, Sumeria, and Mesoamerica. These civilizations built structures we still can't fully explain today, like the pyramids or Stonehenge alignments with stars, solar cycles, mathematical precision that defies what we're told was possible back then. Where did they get this knowledge? Who taught them to build in ways that modern science still puzzles over? And here's the crazy part. There are those who believe remnants of this forbidden knowledge are still around, hidden in secret societies, encoded in symbols and texts, passed down through elite bloodlines. Think about the obelisks, the sacred geometry, the strange symbols scattered across ancient and modern monuments. What if these aren't just relics, but clues left behind by those who still carry fragments of that ancient knowledge? The Bible, the myths, the legends, they're all pointing to one thing: that somewhere in our past, humanity had access to knowledge so powerful it challenged the natural order, a wisdom that allowed us to transcend, to create, to understand reality on a level that most of us can barely imagine. But something, or someone, put an end to it, and now we're left with fragments, stories, and warnings not to pursue what we've lost. Let's head back to one of the oldest civilizations on record, ancient Sumeria. These people left us with some of the most detailed and intriguing origin stories out there. And they weren't just telling tales of ordinary gods. They spoke of beings called the Anunnaki. According to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki came from the heavens to earth, seeking one thing: resources, specifically gold. But here's the twist: they didn't want to mine it themselves, and that's where humanity comes in. According to Sumerian myth, these gods, the Anunnaki, decided that they needed a labor force, a breed of workers who would toil and mine the earth on their behalf. So what did they do? They created us. Yes, humans weren't created to walk freely on the earth, to explore, or to rule. We were made to work, to serve the very beings who shaped us. Now, think about what that means. This isn't some fluffy story of divine creation out of love or compassion. It's a blueprint for a workforce, tailored and bred for labor. The Sumerians believed that the Anunnaki genetically modified existing creatures on Earth, blending their own essence with ours to create a new kind of being, one with enough intelligence to follow orders, but bound by physical limits and mortal constraints to ensure they'd stay subservient. And this isn't just some fringe theory. The tablets from ancient Sumer spell it out in surprising detail. The humans they created weren't even given freedom or autonomy at first. They were controlled, closely monitored, kept in line. In fact, in one Sumerian text, humans were essentially described as the black-headed people who served in temples, harvested crops, and yes, mind resources. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Some researchers have pointed out that this myth of humanity as workers bound to serve has eerie echoes in the Bible's Genesis account. Think about it. After Adam and Eve's so-called fall, they're cursed with a life of labor by the sweat of your brow. You will eat your food. It's almost as if that curse wasn't a punishment but a reminder, a reassertion of humanity's original purpose as servants, as workers. And it's not just Sumerian myths that speak of humanity as servants to higher beings. The Bible hints at it, Egyptian mythology alludes to it, and even Greek myths touch on humanity's role as pawns in the plans of gods. It's as if this idea of humanity as a workforce isn't just one culture's story, but a recurring theme across ancient civilizations. Could it be that we're seeing different cultures, different myths, telling the same story, that humanity was designed with an agenda in mind? Some theorists suggest that traces of this worker mentality are still embedded in human society today. Think about our system's labor hierarchy, obedience to authority. We're raised, trained, and conditioned to work, to serve, to fill roles that often have us giving up personal freedom in exchange for survival. And that raises a chilling question. Are we just repeating the same cycles established by the Anunnaki? Are we, in a way, living out a design that was set for us thousands of years ago? If the Sumerians were right, then humanity's history isn't about freedom or divine blessing, it's about servitude, about being molded to fit a purpose we never chose. And maybe, just maybe, the systems we live under today are echoes of that original control, a design we've been following without even realizing it. We've all heard it a million times, created in the image of God, but what does that really mean? Does it mean we're divine or just some shadow of something greater? Let's start with the basics. In the book of Genesis, it says that God created humans in His own image. It sounds like we're meant to be something special, right? But here's the thing, image doesn't necessarily mean equality or even closeness. An image is just a reflection, a shadow. So what if we're only a fraction, a copy, a limited version of something infinitely more powerful? In the ancient world, being created in the image of a god didn't necessarily mean you were beloved or even valued. In fact, in many cultures, only kings and rulers were considered made in the image of the gods. They were seen as earthly representations of divine power. The rest of humanity was just there to serve. So, when Genesis says humanity was created in God's image, could it mean that we were given just enough of God's qualities to make us useful, but not enough to make us powerful or truly independent? Some interpretations suggest that being made in the image of God might mean we carry a spark of something divine, but in a highly limited way. We're given curiosity, ambition, the drive to create, yet we're bound by limitations, mortality, and rules set by forces beyond our control. It's like we're designed to strive for greatness but never truly reach it, always yearning for something just out of reach. It's a recipe for control, if you think about it. Keep humanity striving, pushing, reaching, but never quite breaking free. Ancient texts from different cultures hint that gods, or those who ruled in their names, wanted humanity to stay dependent, controlled, useful, but never powerful. This is where the concept of being in God's image might be more about containment than empowerment. We were created with enough potential to serve, to build, to toil, and maybe even to worship, but not enough to challenge, not enough to truly understand or reach the level of the divine. Now think about the symbols associated with divinity: light, wisdom, creation. These are things humanity has always been drawn to but never fully attained. Every ancient culture has legends about people who tried to bridge the gap between humanity and the divine. The Greeks had Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and was punished for giving humanity a taste of divine power. In the Bible, the tree of knowledge was forbidden to humans, as if full understanding was a privilege we were never meant to have. What if this idea of being in God's image is less about divinity and more about restriction? We're given just enough to stay curious, to keep asking questions, but always under the watchful eye of a creator who limits what we're allowed to know or achieve. Even the concept of sin in the Bible often revolves around humans attempting to access forbidden knowledge, forbidden power, things that would make us more than mere reflections. What if there was a point in time when humanity got close to breaking these barriers, when we nearly ascended beyond? Civilizations like Egypt and Mesopotamia made strides in mathematics, astronomy, architecture, knowledge that modern science still marvels at. But as soon as we started to approach that level of power or understanding, something happened to bring us back down: wars, floods, mysterious disappearances of knowledge. It's almost as if there's an invisible limit imposed on how far humanity can go. From this perspective, humanity's story becomes profoundly mysterious, filled with haunting questions we may have never dared to ask. Is our history truly a tale of continuous progress, or is it an endless cycle where we reach for great heights only to be pulled down inexplicably? Perhaps the truth about our origins and purpose isn't the beautiful story we've been told, but a journey marked by struggle, a constant effort to break free from invisible chains of control. Could it be that we're living in a world designed to keep us obedient, forever yearning but never reaching true freedom? And if so, is there a way to break this cycle, to one day understand our true nature and potential fully? The questions linger, shrouded in mystery, urging our curiosity onward. Will we continue to live within this cycle, or will we ultimately find an escape? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for the hidden answers. Perhaps, in a single moment, the truth will finally reveal itself.